Hey guys, this is Corey. Welcome to CNA Films and Animation. Well, it's that time of the month again where we're going to talk about director, and today's video is of George Lucas. Famous for the Star Wars movies, specifically the first film, and the infamous prequels. Basically, going to just talk about films that he's made, my thoughts on each film, and give you guys my thoughts on them and go from there. So, back in 1971, he started off with the film THX 1138. The film starred Robert Duvall and Donald Pleasance, and basically it followed a man and a woman. The man was named THX. Basically, they lived in a society that was very controlling, and basically the film showcases Robert Duvall and his girlfriend running off from this society, pretty much to escape. The film is a very interesting film. I thought that it had some very good cinematography as well as an interesting story. It was very difficult to fully understand it for at least the first half. Wasn't sure where it was going or exactly what was going on, but as the film progressed, it started understanding a little bit more, and thought that the film as a whole was interesting. Again, very beautiful cinematography. It's directed well, and it's certainly probably not my favorite of his, but it is still a very good movie, and it's definitely a worthy first film. In fact, it kind of felt like it was a student film more than anything else. The acting was really good, and the style of the film was very unique. So I like that aspect of it. 2 years later, he went and made American Graffiti, which was set in 1962, and it basically follows a group of high schoolers. They're all about to graduate, and it's kind of the last night to do a big hurrah before they go their separate ways and go into college or the real world, whatever they're doing. Film starred Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, Paul Le Mat, Charles Martin Smith, and for a small role, Harrison Ford. And basically, main players were Richard Dreyfuss and Paul Le Mat. I'd say they had probably the most amount of screen time. Ron Howard had a decent amount of screen time as well, but Charles Martin Smith played a guy named Terry. He was kind of the nerd of the group. Ended up getting hot rod, basically went cruising around town, picked up a woman, and got into all sorts of mischief. But he's kind of the comic relief of the story. Paul Le Mat was kind of a greaser who ends up being stuck with a 13 or 14-year-old girl named Carol. And they had good chemistry together. I really liked the storyline that went with them. I thought that it was a very interesting storyline, and it really worked. Richard Dreyfuss' storyline was good, as was Ron Howard. It's definitely a film about the time. It was set in 1962. The music was excellent. I mean, just a fantastic soundtrack of 1950s music. Really enjoyed that. A lot of beautiful cars, a lot of beautiful women. It's just an all-around good film that depicts kind of a coming-of-age story in a way that's all set in one night. Very memorable film, and really enjoyed it. Now we move on to the big four. George Lucas only directed 6 movies, and the big four are, of course, the Star Wars films. 1977, he went and directed Star Wars, which is later named Episode 4, New Hope. And of course it starred Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, and everybody pretty much knows the storyline, so I'm not going to get into the story of these Star Wars movies, but I will share my thoughts on it. First off, the original Star Wars film from 1977 is one of my all-time favorite movies. I grew up with it, probably saw it when I was 4 years old, and have seen it, way more than I can ever count. I have seen this movie so many times, and it's one of those movies that, to me, is timeless. I can put it on any time and, still find enjoyment in it. Absolutely love the characters. I love the story. It's definitely got other influences from older films. Special effects were top notch for its time, and it's one of the most memorable sci-fi films ever made. Then, he did not direct the 1980 film The Empire Strikes Back, nor The Return of the Jedi from 1983, but let's see, 77. About 22 years later, he wrote and directed episodes 1, 2, and 3. And so episode 1, Phantom Menace, is one of the most disliked movies of all time. It's a movie that is panned by everybody. I myself am not a big fan of the first episode. I do like certain elements of it. Specifically, I like Darth Maul. I like some of the special effects. I like some of the fight sequences, but for the most part, I find it to be very boring and confusing overall. Another thing is there's just a lot of stuff that really doesn't seem all that important throughout the film. There's talk of the Trade Federation and all this, and it's like really didn't necessarily need all that. Really didn't advance any storyline for the prequels. It just was kind of there. A lot of people hate Jar Jar. I myself, I do find him annoying, but I don't think he's the worst thing ever made either. It's one of those things where I will say that Episode 1 and even Episode 2 are probably my least favorite of the prequels, but I do think that they do have certain qualities. The biggest quality for Episode 1, like I said, was Darth Maul. Fantastic character. Absolutely loved the mystery behind him, especially the fact that he has very little dialogue throughout the film. There's a lot of mystery behind him, and unfortunately he is killed off, but as of recently, the Clone Wars animated series has become canon. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that with the newer movies. Possibly have a spin-off character, or a spin-off movie rather. You never know. Anything's possible, especially since the TV series and everything. But yeah. Now we move on to the 2002 film Attack of the Clones. This one's difficult for me to sit through. It really is. I mean, the dialogue's very cheesy. I never really cared about the romantic relationship aspect of it, with Padme and everything. Hayden Christensen's not a terrible actor. It's just he's given the dialogue that I don't think anybody could make good. Some of the good, more positive aspects of the film, I'd say, is, the fight sequences, and especially, like, the Clone Wars aspect of it was very interesting, very cool. The comic relief was hit and miss throughout. There was less Jar Jar. Still had speaking parts in this one, which, depending on how you feel about him. But, yeah, I mean, there are some neat elements of the film, especially like the Yoda fight sequence with Count Dooku. But yeah, I mean, it's one of my least favorite of the Star Wars films, up there with Phantom Menace. But there are some cool elements. And finally, with the Revenge of the Sith, I probably like this one the most out of the prequels, and that's mainly because of all the action in it. I like where they went in some parts. I think they went a little too far with, you know, him killing the kids and everything. I thought that was like, you know, we get it, he's evil, but you don't need to make him that evil. Yeah, it's just one of those movies that it wraps up very nicely. It has some neat action and stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's okay. Not my favorite, but you know, it's certainly a little bit better than the other two. I'm excited for the new movies. I know George Lucas isn't directing it, that's J.J. Abrams. But, you know, I'm excited to see where they go with it. They just released the cast today, so that should be pretty exciting to see them all do whatever they're going to do. As far as George Lucas goes, as far as like a director and everything, I think he's just okay. He's definitely more of a marketing kind of guy. You know, he knows how to write a film to a point. I mean, the prequels, but you know, he did help with the Indiana Jones movies. He did help with, you know, a lot of other franchises produced, written. You know, he's definitely had a huge cultural impact as far as society goes and the entertainment world. You know, without Star Wars, we wouldn't have films that we have today. So, you know, really he is a very important role model when it comes to the film industry, and definitely what it has become today. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad that he hasn't directed a whole lot more, because, you know, like I said, his earlier stuff's probably the best stuff, and his later stuff is more miss than hit. But yeah, I mean, like him or hate him, he's still a very important part of society, and you know, we have him to thank. You know, what's your favorite film of his? For me, honestly, and it's probably just the nostalgia part of me, I'd have to say it's the first Star Wars, simply because I grew up with it, simply loved it. A close second would be American Graffiti. Least favorite film of his, for me, is probably The Phantom Menace. Despite my love for Darth Maul, it's still got a lot of issues. And Red Letter Media did a fantastic analysis of the film, or all three of the prequels. So check out his review of the films, because you know, he did it far better than I ever could. But yeah. So tell me, guys, you know, share your thoughts on the director, the films, anything at all. Comment below. Let me know. Love to hear your feedback. If you guys like this video, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe. Be sure to check out our other videos. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. If you have any movie suggestions or TV suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And as always, I'm Corey, and I'll see you guys in the next one.